get to 10 yards, and I'm like, man, this feels pretty good right here. But I got greedy, and I wanted to get in within that 7 yards. He would hear me a little bit, like, I'd break a little bit of the weeds, and he would snap his head over and look, but I just kept still, and finally he'd eventually calm down. He would look straight to the north, and every once in a while he would look to the northeast. But he'd only hold that position for maybe 15, 20 seconds. Drew my bow and came up and slithered the arrow right through that little hole, and the deer didn't even move.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 228. Chancey Walters, Gut Instinct, Mouth Call Buck Grunts, and Time on Stand Stupid. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Black Ash Outdoor Products. Reduce your risk of tree stand suspension trauma with a Tree Stand Wingman, the Tree Stand Emergency Descender System. The Enforcer. Take control of your odor footprint with your personal ozone generator. The Rack Packer. Don't drag your deer out of the woods like a caveman. Never drag a deer again. No need to kill yourself dragging a deer when there's the Rack Packer. Use the promo code BIGBUCK, BIGBUCK, at checkout to earn free shipping at $23 value. Go to therackpacker.com. Covert Scouting Cameras. Remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. The Horny Buck Seed Company. It's all about the freshest seed. Morse's Sporting Goods. A full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. Northwoods Common Sense. New England's finest whitetail deer lures, 100% fresh, pure, and undiluted. And Big Buck merch. For only $19.99, you can get a cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirt and show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Don Higgins from Higgins Outdoors and Real World Wildlife Products. Tune in and hear one of my favorite podcasts, the Big Buck Registry.
Hey, this is Dr. Ken Nordberg. You're listening to my favorite podcast on the internet, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Shane Mahoney from Conservation Visions Incorporated, and I'm listening now to one of my favorite hunting podcasts, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Chancey Walters is a fisherman, a hunter, a wildlife artist, an entrepreneur, a cook, a traveler, and he's self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie and storm chaser. There's probably no shock to learn that Chancey is part of the Whitetail Adrenaline Crew, the deer hunting film company led by Jared Scheffler, whose claim to fame is all public land hunting, no commercials, ads, or sponsors. Chancey prefers a no-scouting, run-and-gun, snooking for whitetail style of hunting. He says it leads to a stress-free lifestyle. His talents go beyond the field, though, when he picks up a paintbrush to capture the very scenes he lived and makes a living selling the artwork he created. We'll turn to our full interview with Chancey Walters in just a moment, but before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the deer news.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the 100th episode of the Deer News. In our first story this week, 3 men convicted of poaching deer in Grayson County, Texas. This story is from the KXII Fox News 12 website and is reported by Kristen Weaver. 3 Grayson County men were recently charged with poaching white-tailed deer. Texas Game Warden Michael Hummert has been investigating the 3 cases for over a year. One of those cases happened around October 2016. Hummert said Sherman resident Timothy Kane Sweet shot and killed a large white-tailed deer. Sweet tried to kill the deer with a bow originally, but it ran off. When he came across it again hours later, Hummert said Sweet shot the deer at least 5 times. Killing a deer with a gun is illegal in Grayson County. Sweet is listed as the Anna High School assistant principal. He was charged with 3 misdemeanors and has to pay $10,000 in restitution. In May 2017, Brian Culp of Gunter pled no contest for killing a deer using a special license reserved for disabled veterans. He wasn't qualified to possess that license, Hummert said. Culp will have to pay $6,000. But Hummert said the worst offender is John Drinnan of Whitesboro. Drinnan eventually fessed up to killing a 200-inch white-tailed deer that was caught on a local game camera. He was charged with shooting a deer without the landowner's permission, a felony, along with 2 other Class A misdemeanors. Drinnan has to pay $18,000 in restitution and could lose his hunting license. Hummert said anyone who thinks somebody is poaching is asked to give Texas Game Wardens a call. About 500,000 hunters expected for start of antlered deer season in Pennsylvania. This story is from the Cumberlink.com website and was reported by Phyllis Zimmerman. The State Game Commission was estimating that around 500,000 people would take to the fields on this past Monday for the start of the deer hunting season in Pennsylvania. Firearm deer season began statewide on November 27th, but with a few stipulations for certain areas. An antlered-only season runs from November 27th to December 1st in most of the state's wildlife management units that includes Cumberland, Dauphin, and Perry counties. An antlered and antlerless season follows in these areas from December 2nd to December 9th, according to the State Game Commission's 2017-2018 Pennsylvania Hunting and Trapping Digest. In a few other areas, an antlered and antlerless deer season runs from November 27th to December 9th. A complete map of the wildlife management units is available on the Game Commission's website at www.pgc.pa.gov. So far, prospects look promising for this year's deer hunters. Game Commission officials report that deer populations across the state are stable or growing. Agency biologists believe the state's overall buck harvest could increase for the 3rd consecutive year. The 2016 season opened to warm weather, which contributed to 25% of the season's buck harvest occurring on opening day. A total of 149,460 bucks were taken during the season, making it the state's 2nd largest buck harvest since antler restrictions were enacted in 2002. Hunter shoots pickup truck after mistaking it for deer, police say. This story is from the FoxNews.com website and was reported by Catherine Lamb. An Ohio hunter was charged on Friday after he fired at a brown pickup truck when he thought it was a deer in western New York. Marvin C. Miller, 26 of Middlefield, was hunting near Snake Forest Road in North Harmony around 11:20 a.m. when he thought he spotted a deer, but it turned out to be a brown pickup truck. He fired a 7mm high-powered scoped rifle at the truck, striking the front fender of the driver's side. Sheriff Joe Grace stated Miller was absolutely irresponsible. The bullet missed the unidentified driver and the passenger, Robert Merritt, of Springboro, Pennsylvania, by just a few feet. The bullet also punctured the engine's compartment and disabled the vehicle. Miller came out of the woods to check on Merritt and the driver. He was arrested and charged with discharging a firearm across a public roadway and second-degree reckless endangerment. He was released on bail and could face additional charges after an investigation. That concludes this week's 100th edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Thanks to everyone for listening, whether it's for the 100th time or the first time. We truly appreciate your spending time with us each week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller with the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Chancey Walters. Chancey Walters, welcome to the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Hey, you're doing great, man. Doing great.
So, where are you right now? I hear
I got invited on a little early morning pheasant bus. It's been 12 years since I've been, and a good buddy of mine I ain't seen for a while. He's like, let's go out and hit some public ground. So here I am.
You like the outdoors, I can tell.
You know what? I love it. You know, my dad never hunted. He just fished, but I kind of just learned on my own, really.
Yeah.
And just kind of did my own thing.
So tell me about that. Tell me about how you developed your love for the outdoors and how you managed to get into hunting despite having a father that wasn't really involved.
Yeah, no, I I had an uncle that went and stuff like that. We went a few times, but I mainly, I'll tell you, TNN Outdoors, man. I mean, I'd seen that show. I mean, every Saturday and Sunday, I'd get up and watch all the shows and stuff like that, and that was kind of what, like, man, that's kind of really that's what I want to do, That's what got me really fired up, watching all the hunting, different hunting shows, and then obviously on Sunday was the Bassmaster, Elite Series fishing on Sundays, so on ESPN, so I'd always watch all that. But yeah, that's what got me going, just watching all those guys on there, and that's what triggered me to get after it, I guess.
I think that had a large influence on a lot of us in that generation where we,
you're a TNN Outdoors man.
I'm a TNN guy too. Absolutely. I look so forward to watching those shows. And, I had a good conversation with Cuz Strickland the other day, who was a little bit older than us, but not by much. But he was one of the guys making those shows that got us up and watching and seeing what those guys were doing. That was kind of like the early beginnings of what TV became.
Yeah, that's what started it all right there, TNN.
Absolutely.
I mean, really.
Absolutely.
And it was, I think it was, well, pretty much, remember it was like a country music station plus the hunting on Saturdays.
Right.
And so it was pretty cool. I like that channel. I don't know whatever happened to it. I'm sure they got bought out.
Yep. And it really was, to me, it was that little trigger. Said, Dad, I want to do this. Take me hunting.
Exactly. Yep. So my dad was a golfer. He didn't know much. We did a lot of fishing together, pond fishing, stuff like that. But,
that's funny.
Yeah, that was mainly it on that.
Yep. So you, sounds like you got into it about the same kind of way that I did, and you just started exploring. Do you remember any of your earliest, or what's your earliest recollection of deer hunting?
Well, deer hunting, I actually have one of my really good friends that I grew up with, his dad, and they would always go hunting every year, and I was probably 13, 14, I don't know what I was. And they would hunt every year and just really, they're always hanging the deer up, and they were just shooting a lot of does. I mean, they didn't really care about bucks or nothing like that, which is really cool. And they were they ate so much venison that, they'd go out and during the shotgun season, just kill as many does as they could, as many tags they had. And it was always cool seeing them dragging in there and processing the dog. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And when you're that little, that stuff really, it was pretty cool when you're little and you're seeing all that stuff going on.
Right.
Man, I want to do that, And I told him, I said, I want to do this. He said, no problem. We'll take you next year. So he took me, and on one of my first drives up through there, I walked up through there, and I snuck up on a couple does, and they were bedded under this cedar tree, and I shot them about 20 yards away, laying there. One of them took off running like it wasn't even like I missed it. I was shooting a bird barrel 20 gauge, coast to coast, junk. I mean, nice gun, but it was junk condition. And bird barreled that rascal at 20 yards and took off running up over the hill. I'm like, I missed him. Well, and then I walked over and I seen all the blood on the snow. Obviously, I didn't miss him. That was my first deer. Was a doe, big giant horse-headed doe too, man. It's a giant.
Oh, one of the monarch does of the woods.
That's right. Magnum doe.
Magnum doe. That's cool. Right. To shoot a deer in its bed is an accomplishment, no matter where you are. I think that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. It's everything's got to be so right. The wind. I mean, they thought they were hid, and the wind was good, obviously, and they were getting ready to probably bolt. But I got up there and I spotted their ears. Yeah. And it worked out.
Yeah, you can catch them. I mean, if the wind's right, you can catch them, especially if they're.
That's right.
If you're doing a cross-cut wind and they're looking down over the hill and you're coming up from the back.
Yep.
Good chance.
Big bucks and they can't hide forever. I'll promise you that. They can all be tricked. It's just every situation is a little different, and to make that situation happen, you really got to calculate it and do the right steps to get in there. That's right. Sure. I just got lucky on that deal, obviously, but.
Right. Well, I think
I don't even remember what way the wind was blowing.
It seems like you can do.
13 years old.
You can be as good as any hunter on the planet, but there's still got to be an element of luck.
Absolutely.
You can't make it happen. You just have to increase your.
And I'll
odds.
tell you, deer can sense things. Even like when you're close to one, they get a sense just like a human does. And
right.
It's crazy. So you got to work. I mean, that's a whole nother whole nother thing that you have to worry about too. I mean, even though they don't hear you, smell it, or what to do, they get that they get that feel, man. It's just like when you know somebody's close to you, or and whatever. I mean, they get that feeling probably more than we do.
No question.
So
I mean,
that's something that people don't think about.
They have to, as a natural defense mechanism, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Part of their thing. So if they don't have that, they don't survive as a species. They have to be endlessly aware that something might be approaching, and they spook easily. Even if you're watching a deer in a field coming in, they always get spooky on a transition line before they actually cross over into the next whatever type of topography it is. It seems, and they'll look around and they'll stop and they'll jump back. There's nothing there, but it's like just this natural instinct. So add a hunter into that mix that smells like a hunter, that is downwind of that, or even worse, upwind of the deer. Now you're really going to spook them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you're 100% correct.
So what are you doing now? Like it looks like you're an artist. You're involved in filmography. You're working with some of the whitetail adrenaline guys, doing some filming, but you're also killing big deer. So where does all that fit into your life?
I'll tell you what, man. I've been very. I don't know if I've been very good at multitasking, but I've just put myself in position to multitask, I guess. I mean, obviously my main job is my artwork. I mean, I've been very fortunate and blessed with that art talent, and been able to use it to, pay my bills and do the things I love to do, and working on other things, to hopefully make money while I sleep. But right now, I mean, that funds my fun time. Obviously, I don't have a big giant house and all that stuff yet, or nothing like that. I don't need all that, but I'm just, making enough just to do the things I love to do. And, deer hunting, I'll tell you who really inspired me to pursue my deer hunting and learn is Don Kiske. I watched that guy back in the day.
Yep.
And I just loved his style of hunting, and I just felt like he really knew what he was doing. He was someone good to look up to and watch hunt, and learn from.
Right.
Some of the things that he's done has really helped me in my success in whitetail hunting for sure. And pretty much just deleting all the things that could mess up your hunt is pretty much the key, I think, to deer hunting.
A process of
you go through that checklist of all the things. What if that could mess it up? I mean, do I want to go down in there and run a camera? What if I blow one up out of the bed? I just delete all that stuff. I don't go down into where they're at. I don't do none of that. Obviously, I hunt public ground now. Me and Jared, we're doing all that. And that is just completely stress-free for me. And I don't have to worry about nothing. Just go in and hunt and have a good time. It's fun again for me. It used to be so stressful worrying about people seeing my vehicle parked and where I was hunting and getting permission again, and people getting permission also. And now it's just like, you know what? It's public hunting. If there's other people there, they're there, and you just high five them and keep on hunting. I mean, there's no details to be worried about. It's so stress free. I mean, I love to be stress free. I hate stressing about stuff, and it was there for a while. It was making it not fun for me.
Gotcha.
So hunting private ground and different things. So
that's a cool way to live. I like that. So let's talk about your artistry a little bit more. How did you become an artist? I mean, you're doing some amazing work. I was checking out your Facebook page. It's really nice, and looks like you've given pieces out to some pretty important people in the industry.
Yeah, man. It's I started painting. I'll actually tell you a quick version of how I got the idea on those turkey feathers. I have a guy. His name's John Harper. He loves turkey hunting. He's actually a girl that I went to school with. It's her grandpa, and she'd always tell me about how much he loves the turkey hunt. Anyway, I made friends with the guy, and anyway, one day he called me and he's like, "Chance, you ought to come out to the house." And he collected all kinds of turkey memorabilia, from sculptures to bronzes to paintings and stuff like that. And he's like, "You ought to come out to the house. I got an idea to show you." And so I drove out to the house, and he was out there and he was painting on the turkey feathers. And he had them real cheap plastic watercolor brushes with the black bristles. I mean, he was not an artist, but he had them he demonstrated like the idea to me, like, you ought to paint on these. And I'm like, damn, that's a good idea. And that's where I first seen, and that was probably 12 years ago, first time I've seen turkey feather paintings. And I was like, man, this is, he's got something there. But it took me about 100 of them by the time I figured out really how to paint them,
right? And
how to keep them where they wouldn't spread apart and all that stuff. And people just love them. I mean, I've probably sold I don't know, maybe close to over 6,000 of them now.
No
Probably.
kidding.
Yeah, it's a full-time job. I mean, people send me their turkey feathers, and I paint on them. And you'd think, like, where do you get all those turkey feathers? Well, obviously, I'm not shooting that many turkeys. I shoot my 2 a year,
Right.
But other people, you only have so much room on your wall space for a couple fans. Everybody puts a couple fans, and that's about it. Well, then they save them for their decoys, or they just put them in the freezer thinking they're going to use them someday. Well, they give them to me because they think they're going to freeze or rot or whatever, and I got a nice stash of them to be able to paint on. So that works out really nice, having lots of friends all over that give me their turkey fans.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It's, turkey fans are fairly large when you try to fill up a wall and you don't have a ton of wall space. If you don't have an auditorium, your walls are getting filled up after just a couple of years. That's interesting.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the feather paintings, I like painting them, but I really don't. I mean, it's more, I don't get to spend the time on them. See, if I spend all day on them and make them look real, it's going to be tough to get the money that it's worth out of them. Does that make sense? Right. So I spend enough time on them to make them look good and presentable, and that's how I sell them. That's how I'm able to, make money doing it. And because you think about it, you spend all day on a feather. It's worth $500 to $1,000, but nobody's going to pay that. There'll be a few people that'll pay that, but 3/4 of the people, they don't have that kind of money to spend on artwork. So I keep it at around that $200 mark, and it's very affordable for everybody.
Right.
And
right.
Yeah.
So you found the sweet spot where it balances out. You're working on a medium that most people don't work on. I mean, how many turkey feather painters do you know in the country?
There's a couple really good. Nicole Weller Larson, she's a very, very awesome artist, and she spends a lot more time on her feathers. They're very beautiful. I love her artwork, and I'd like to meet her someday and share some different art stories, art and stuff. It'd be cool to maybe do a painting together or something. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
There's a couple other guys that do them. It's starting to grow. A lot of people are doing them, but you know what? There's enough people in the outdoors that, the market's still there for everybody to make a little money on their artwork. So.
Right. But definitely not for everybody, because if everybody could do it well,
that's a good thing.
You wouldn't be
That's
catching.
a good thing for sure.
You would definitely not be fetching $200 for your paintings. That's good. That's really good. So you're using other mediums too, not just the turkey feather. You've turned to the canvas in some scenarios.
Yes, canvases are. I love painting on my big canvases. That's what I love to do, and that's where I get to really show my talent and spend the time that I want. And here very soon, shortly, I want to kind of only take so many turkey feather orders and really focus on my big canvases is what I really want to. That's what I really want to spend most of my time doing, is work on those. Doing a limited, really high or really low limited edition prints.
Yep.
And go that route.
Did you have any artist training?
I didn't. I picked it all up on my own. Just art's a natural talent, I believe.
Okay.
Like you either have it or you don't. You can learn techniques.
Right.
It's the same thing as singing. You can either sing or you can't, and you either got it or you don't. It's somebody that can't sing. It's hard to teach them how to sing. And it's the same way with artwork.
Yeah. I think it's, in physical ability, either you're a speedster or you're slow or somewhere in between. But if you've got super speed, you can't necessarily build on that. You're either built with it or you're built without it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I see how art would be a similar way. I mean, I could draw a pretty good stick figure, but
yeah.
But if I have to make something look like somebody else, or a representation close enough to be identified as that object by which I started to try to replicate, man, it's going to take me a long time and a lot of eraser marks. Just not going to work.
Yeah.
I've tried.
I'll tell you, man, everybody's got their own talent, and everybody's blessed and fortunate in different ways. And I've just gotten lucky and was blessed with art talent. I mean, it's crazy how it works, and art has gave me my in and everything that I've got to do in my life. Like, it's gave me my connection. It's to do a lot of things and meet a lot of really cool people. My artwork's been my in. I mean, really, it's been my ticket to meeting and doing a lot of cool things.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
It's very fortunate.
Yeah. You found a little niche that you're good at, and you pursued it. And an outdoor artist. They're definitely out there, but that's definitely a niche.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Where do you want to take your artwork from there or from here?
You know what? Eventually, I want to have an art gallery somewhere. I was gonna have one in Fredericksburg, and it just didn't work out. The building that I was going to be in, somebody come in and doubled the price on the rent there in Fredericksburg, the main strip. It's a very big tourist area, and a lot of people with money go through there, and that's where I was going to maybe establish myself. But anyways, it didn't work out, and I think the timing just wasn't 100% correct either. So, down the road, I'd like to have an art gallery somewhere. Probably I'm going to try to have one in Fredericksburg, Texas, or somewhere in that aspect, but I need to get to painting a lot more big paintings before I can open one of those. Right now, I just keep so busy from Facebook and Instagram and all that. I don't even have a website. Just Facebook and everything, and Instagram has just turned into such a, it's like the best place that you can advertise your stuff. I mean, people don't even hardly go to websites anymore unless they're going to buy something,
Gotcha.
So that's how I feel anyway. It seems like I've never had a problem. Like maybe 2, 3, 4% of the people ask me if I have a website, So
right. The artwork is definitely a very unique item, and it almost carries over into filmography. And I see you carrying a camera around a lot. Is that part of?
Okay, man. I don't have a good camera yet. Okay. I'll tell you, I take everything from my Galaxy Samsung phone, and it's crazy what these phones can do these days. I mean, they take amazing pictures, and I love taking pictures. People are like, dude, you're taking another picture. It's like, yeah, man, I got to catch this moment. It's just something I like to do. And
Gotcha.
I feel like I'm pretty good at taking pictures anyway.
Yeah.
I like photography. I mean, that's all there is to it. So
Gotcha.
I am going to get a good camera here eventually.
Gotcha.
And take some really good pictures.
So you do travel around the country a little bit, deer hunting and working on your artwork. Where do you call home? Like where's home base?
Well, I live in southern Iowa. I have a cabin there, and that's home. I mean, I was very fortunate to grow up in southern Iowa. I'm around I got probably 7 lakes within an hour of my house, and I love bass fishing and awesome deer hunting there. It used to be crazy pheasant hunting. It's starting to pick back up around here. So it's a very awesome place to grow up. For me, what I love to do is like, wow, how did I grow up in such a cool little area and have everything right here at my doorstep,
That is cool. It's a great place. So let's talk about deer hunting a little bit. Obviously, where you live, it may be considered, deer hunting mecca of the world.
Yeah, it's not like everybody thinks. Everybody thinks, come to Iowa and you're just going to kill giants, easy. You still got to work for them, man. I mean, I've never had really an easy hunt. This hunt that I had this year on the buck that I killed, I mean, I hunted, 18, 19 days before I shot, that big one I shot with Jared there for Whitetail Adrenaline on public ground.
Right.
It was a definite rodeo until that point. I mean, I've never really had that. I had to go out the first morning and kill a giant in a while, I mean, I've always had to work for the deer. I mean, I've always been in the nosebleeds hunting. I haven't never really had my own leased ground and stuff like that. So it's,
right.
It's a grind every year for me to kill a big one, but you put that time in. And I have a buddy of mine, he always told me this saying, he'd always say, toss, time on stand, stupid. That's what he'd tell me. And he's always killed giant deer. And, the more time you spend out there, the better chance. And every day that you don't see a big one is a day closer it's going to happen. So that's the best way I can say it. And that just keeps you positive out there.
I like that. Toss, time on stand, stupid.
Yep, toss. Yeah.
It's pretty accurate, really.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, even every day that you're out there and you don't see a big one, guess what? That's a day closer it's going to happen.
Right.
So.
A no is just one step closer to a yes, right?
Exactly.
Do you put time in scouting as well? Do you consider that time on stand, or is that?
I don't. Not anymore. I used to. I just go with the flow. Go out maybe a day before I'm going and kind of do a little drive around. Now I'm doing the running and gunning, crawling and brawling style with Jared. So I ain't spending a lot of time out there glassing for deer. Obviously, if I have a little time, I'll do a cruise around. I'm like, oh wow, there's a big one hanging out in that area. Let's pay a little more attention there. But other than that, I don't I don't run no cameras or none of that anymore. I mean, just most of that stuff hurts your hunt more than anything if you ain't running it right. And I'm just freelancing it, man.
Yeah. That's I understand what you're doing with Jared. That term, snooking for whitetail was how we entitled our very first show with Jared a ways back. Was snooking meaning sneaking and looking for whitetail. And
snooking, huh? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, well, we coined. I don't know if we coined it on this show, but it certainly became a popular phrase. Snooking for whitetail.
Right. That's
sneaking
awesome.
And looking.
I like that saying.
Right.
Snooking.
See, we've got toss,
sneaking and looking at the same time.
That's right. Toss and snook. So we've got a couple of different.
Toss. Mitch Cachette's his name, man. He's killed a lot of beautiful bugs. He's probably killed more booners than I've ever seen, than anybody free range that I know. I mean, he's all free range. I mean, he's hunting private ground, but he can signature that saying for sure. And he's one guy that if he tells you something, you better listen because he knows the game.
Right.
And he's got big bucks to prove it.
Well, we'll have to explore that a little further with Mitch. You're so let's talk about some of your skill sets at deer hunting. What has deer hunting taught you over the years, and what mistakes led to some of the strategies that you use today?
I'll tell you, man, it's the key that I've really learned is reading deer, reading them, which means their body language. I've called most of my big bucks that I've shot. I've called them in. It's been one of those deals where you got to really know their body language and when to call at them, when not to, and I've just adapted that through the years of hunting, and obviously I've failed in a lot of different hunts, and you learn from that. But I've built kind of a pretty good way how to call these deer and go through the checklist before they get there to you. And obviously, even to this day, I still mess up all the time. Not all the time, but here and there, and everything. You don't kill them every time, but
right.
To do, having all those little keys and points when you're calling and the little things you look for, it gives you a better chance of success for sure.
Gotcha. Let's explore this calling thing a little bit. We'll come back to some of your trials and errors and mistakes. Mm-hmm. What calling can occur in a few different ways, right? There are grunt calls, doe calls, can calls. There's all kinds of varieties of grunt calls on the market. You can use your mouth. You can be a natural caller. You can use rattling. Tell us about your methodology.
Well, I will tell you the number one thing when you're hunting is always bring your horns with you. And I learned this from Don Kiske. What are you going to do with a deer out there 200-300 yards? There ain't nothing you can do. You just got to look at them if you don't have your horns. So, I always have them. Obviously, I don't rattle them every time. If I can grunt at them and get them in before rattling, I'll do that. And then snort weave obviously is the number one tool of killing big deer. I mean, that's all there is to it. But grunting, I've always, ever since I was little and I heard a grunt call, I could do it with my mouth, and it's worked unbelievable for me. I don't know. They like it. They like that sound that I do when I grunt at them with my mouth. It works really well.
Gotcha. All right. So you're using more or less a natural call.
Yep.
Tell us. Let's break that down a little bit. How do you go about deciding when to call, what call to use, and what calls are you using with your mouth?
Okay. Well, when I see a buck, I mean, obviously, tree stand hunting and hunting on the ground is, two different styles of calling for sure. Because you're pretty much, when you're calling on the ground, you're either blind calling and you're in a thick area and you're trying to convince them there's a deer through on the other side of that, or we're decoying the way me and Jared and Shay and we're decoying these deer, and you're pretty much acting. You are the deer. And I don't call unless I have to. That's the number one thing. If you got a deer coming to you, obviously you don't call at them until they look like they're going to start changing their mind on their direction where they're coming, or just maybe they heard something and they don't know what they heard, and then you give them that grunt just to give them some security, like, oh, that's just a deer over there maybe chasing a doe. Let's go check it out. Go check that situation out. And you kind of learn when to call. It's kind of almost like an instinct deal.
Okay. So it's great. Maybe run us through a scenario, like something an interaction that you might have had, so we get a visual on how this might unfold.
Okay. Well, let's say I've had a couple different times, more than a couple, where I've seen a big buck and he's cruising, and would say he's about 80 yards, and I'll give him a grunt, just a like that, and and all of a sudden he'll look in my direction. And obviously, if he don't look, I'll get louder until he does hear me. And when he's focused on that, give him some time. Don't grunt again or nothing like that, because he's going to be focused on exactly where you're at, and give him time. And then when all of a sudden, if you see him start to like lick his nose, this is like the biggest indication that get ready, because he's coming. Is when you grunt or you snort wheeze and you see that thing start licking his nose, it's on. I mean, 3/4 of the time when you see that, they're gonna cover some ground to you. They might be slow, or they might act like they don't hear you, and they might swing wide trying to go downwind of you. But that means game over. But if all of a sudden I see him, if I grunt at them and they kind of look, but they didn't really pay attention, and they turn their head back straight forward, I'll hit them again, and then usually that usually works really well.
Gotcha.
And obviously, if they're at a long distance, I'll give them a buck roar, like I'll just so they can really hear that grunt, because just a little pop grunt, sometimes they don't register to them, or maybe the wind's blowing, they couldn't hear you very well. So I give them a big grunt. I mean, I'll do it for you right now if you want me to.
Yeah.
This is what I do, just to, and they'll hear that, and it'll register to them,
Right.
And like, oh, that's a grunt, like instead of just a little pop grunt, like they don't catch that stuff like you think they do, and especially when the wind's blowing. Dead calm, obviously, I'd give them a pop grunt and just something simple, because they can hear it. But if you got that wind and you want them to make sure what they hear, I give them a loud grunt like that. And especially mature deer, they ain't worrying about some other deer in there. They're worried about stealing that buck's girlfriend, pretty much what they do.
Right. It's interesting you say that. I guess we all kind of think that, deer can hear everything in the woods, but they really can't, with the wind.
They can't, no.
Right.
No. And sometimes they hear you, and they act like they don't hear you.
Right.
That's a big thing. Like, a lot of guys, man, I'm calling at you, he didn't hear me. He's like he's deaf. No, he's already zoned out on a hot doe trail, and it's going to be really hard to get him to change his mind a lot of times. Sometimes you can, when they're on a doe trail, the best thing that obviously if they don't have that doe with them, you do some grunts, then they're going to think that where I heard that grunt, but there's another buck trying to chase that, or, he's maybe already found that doe that I'm trying to trail, and then he'll come and investigate.
Right.
But the snort wheeze, if you can get him to snort wheeze like that, I don't know, man. That's the most deadly call of all time, is snort wheeze. And I don't know who really invented it. I don't know if maybe it might have been Drury. Might have been Mark Drury that invented it with the mad calls and stuff like that back in the day. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But I heard one do it one day, and I didn't know what it was. And this was when I was like 13, and I heard him, and I'm like, man, what was that? And obviously there was another buck close, and obviously the next year I seen a call. I'm like, oh my God, that's what that was. And I definitely learned how to use that call that next year, and it gave me some success on killing a big buck with my bow that next year.
I've had success calling bucks back, where I spotted one, got on their tail, sat down, started calling, and using a series of buck grunts and little doe bleed in between, all fabricated stuff, nothing.
Absolutely, no, there's nothing wrong.
Right. But it was an interesting interaction, because the deer stayed interested, and I was in some really thick cover, and that buck stayed about 15 yards away for over 2 hours, just moving in and out of the thickest stuff you could find. Finally, it gave me this. Yeah,
he's trying to find. Other deer don't want other deer to know they're around unless they got a doe there. And they're wanting. The bucks are trying. They're trying to hide from. A buck's got a doe. He's trying to bring her away from any other deer. Why during peak of the rut you won't see a lot of deer, or a lot of movement, because they take them out of that jungle and they take them out into the open ground and keep them where no other deer can mess with them. They don't want no other little puke bucks, jungle gym in their program, and they got a girlfriend they just met.
Right.
So that's pretty much the lingo.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is. It's a fascinating dance when you get it going.
Yeah.
But
deer they don't take them to the thick stuff. They take the does out to the most open stuff they can get, maybe in a dip where you can't see them off the road. But that's where these big deer land during peak of the rut most of the time.
Right. Gotcha. So how did you learn to do the mouth calls? I mean, what you just provided for us sounded really good. I mean, better than any hand bought call or store bought call.
Yeah.
So how did you work on that?
I'm actually blowing in, like in my throat, like I just heard the sound, and ever since I was little, I've always been good at making noises. I used to be able to gobble really good and turkey call and stuff. I can still turkey call a little bit, but obviously I hit my maturity and I wasn't able to do all those crazy turkey sounds like I used to. But it's just I'm actually sucking in my throat and it's giving me that sound. I just heard the first time I heard a grunt, I just like, oh, maybe try doing it with my mouth, and I did it. I'm like, holy shit, that's awesome.
So you're breathing in, not breathing out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can control how deep it goes, so I can do a younger buck like and then an older buck, and then a real old mature buck, and it's just I can control it. It depends on each situation. I try to do a little bit of a meaner. Obviously, the deer I'm wanting to kill are a little older deer, and I try to do a little more of an older grunt. But I'll tell you what, I've had big bucks that sound like they're little. Just hear that little. I mean, big giant whitetails make that noise too. So I don't know if necessarily that you have to make a deep grunt or not. I just do it just to make myself feel better about it, I guess.
Right. Gotcha. That's
about being confident in whatever you're doing.
Very fascinating. So what else have you learned along the way that you would consider a good lesson learned in the deer woods when you're trying to track down a big monster whitetail?
Here's the deal. The number one thing, I mean, not so much what me and Jared are doing now. I mean, he told me a few years ago, man, you got to do this stuff with me. And I was like, you know what? I'm so sick of getting jungle gymmed on private ground. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go have a good time. Let's do it. And that's when I made my change of hunting public ground, on the ground, Cherokee style, crawling, snooking, whatever you want to call it. And that style, you don't really have to play. You got to play the wind, but you don't have to worry about your scent control as much. I actually have a product called Big Buck Ruiner, and I make it for everybody that's, we put it on even when we're doing this stuff, just in case the deer gets downwind of us or something like that. But, the number one thing is completely playing the wind, even if you have that scent control. Everything, you can't cut no corners. I mean, pretty much all you got to do is think, what is this gonna maybe affect my hunt? Should I, and the number one thing is not going in to where you're hunting too much. Leave it alone. A lot of people wonder, man, there ain't no big deer in my area now. Well, because you jungle gymmed it pretty much. You got to treat your ground like a wildlife refuge. You can't go in there running cameras every 2 seconds. If there's a big one in there, the better chance that he's going to be in there is less that you're in there. Deer don't like people, so if they know that there's somebody in there, they know that's their bedroom, and they know if somebody's been in and out of there, they're going to move. They're not hanging out with people, especially deer in the Midwest. I mean, there's a lot of places where you can get away with that, easier styles of hunting, and real deer hunting in the Midwest, you can't play that game. People get lucky during the rut and a neighboring buck comes cruising through there. But if you got a buck living in an area, the best thing is to stay out of there until you're ready to hunt, instead of going in there and putting extra tree stands and more cameras. We got to get one more camera picture. That's all the worst thing you could do.
Right.
I mean, that's a number, and it's almost like a drug to people. They have to get a picture of this deer. They have to get a picture of it. And guess what? It's ruining theirs. And there's a lot of guys that got a lot of pictures of deer and they kill it, but they were lucky and they were on the edge and they were getting pictures of them at night and they weren't in their dance floor. Does that make sense?
Yep. Gotcha.
And I mean, I used to run for a hunting ranch right out of high school. I ran 85 trail cameras, and this is before digital. So I was running half of them one day and half of them the other, running 36 millimeter rolls. And I learned what to do and what not to do with camera hunting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much what it's called. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using cameras, but you have to use them the same or the right way. And those cameras that they have out nowadays that run to your phone and where you don't have to go in there and check them all the time, that's the number one camera on the market. Whatever. I mean, all that stuff's good.
Okay. So,
if you're going to do the camera thing.
If you're going to do the camera thing, you prefer the technology that sends it to you by cell.
Exactly. The least amount of time that you're in there checking the cameras is the best way. And I've always told people back in the day, and you don't have to get a daylight picture of that buck. He's in there. Figure out kind of where he's at mentally and then go in and do what you got to do to kill him. But stay out. Get pictures of him. Put a dang T-post. Put a fence or a camera on a fence line out on the edge of the cornfield where they eventually make it out to, and get cameras there or on a scrape outside the zone, and you're never going to disturb that deer. And you can check the camera in the middle of the day and you're good to go. I mean, then you ain't messing up your area with that big buck. And because if you think about it, if you just have it in your mind, like, did I mess it up? Have I been going in there too much? Have I been checking my cameras too much? Did I mess it up when I went and hung that tree stand in there? You delete all that stuff. Don't go in there, until you're ready to hunt type of deal.
Right.
It's so easy to figure it out.
Gotcha.
But anyways, I learned the hard way, trust me.
Right. And that's the best way to learn. How'd you get involved with Jared?
You know what? I've known Jared for probably 10 years. I used to travel around selling artwork at the hunting shows and turkey decoys and stuff like that. And I actually met him at the Madison show. I just went and got my booth set up, and I took off kind of walking through there, and I seen this little 10 by 10 booth, and the kid had some DVDs there, and he had a good looking blonde with him, and I noticed that first. And I was like, who's this guy? And anyway, I started talking to him, and we hit it off. I mean, I was like, this kid is on my page. Like, he is. We were like long lost brothers, and we don't even know it. And anyway, we became really good friends that day and kept in touch. And kept in touch throughout all the shows, and I'd see him at the different shows, and then we started hunting together. I mean, just here probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago, he came to Iowa, and I showed him some different public ground, and that's how it all started, man.
Gotcha. So you've run camera for Jared. He's run camera for you.
Mm-hmm.
And
we actually had 2 cameramen filming us. A couple of them have been a lot of work for Jim Shockey.
Yep.
And Matt and Jonathan. They're unbelievable cameramen. And these cameras are huge, and you got to know it's hard to, when you have a camera that size and the video quality that it's putting out, you got to have a guy that knows when to move, and he's pretty much he's got to be your tail. He's got to be your twin. Like, he's got to read the situation almost as good as you do. And that's a really that's the tough thing about filming in open ground and stuff like that. You got to have a guy that's on the same page, and it's tough. And you always get you get to arguing every once in a while, but most of the time you got to agree with each other. Like, should we do this? Do you agree? And you go, and the number one thing that we've really learned the last couple of years, me and Jared filming, is you got to go by your gut instinct. The first thing that comes to your mind, like, should we move over here? Should we move now? All that stuff, you got to go by your gut instinct. We've learned, because I can't tell you how many big deer in the last 2 years that we've been hunting, to where if we would have went by our gut, we would have killed them or had a shot. And how many times that puts you when you're trying to discuss on what to do in the heat of the battle. Like, we miss out on like a minute. Like, we needed 1 more minute, 2 more minutes. And it's like, man, we discussed for 3 minutes. We would have been already in that position. And so gut instinct is the key. First thing that comes to your mind. And obviously that's not going to work every time, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to work 75% of the time. Your gut's going to be the best thing.
I'll take 75% any day. What do you think keeps us as people, humans, hunters, from going with our gut instinct? Do we just think about these things too much?
You second guess yourself. You got to, and not being confident in the move, or, and a lot, like I've had a lot of situations get messed up. So you try to analyze all that stuff when you just need to go with your gut and go for it. I mean, it's unbelievable. Jared will tell you the same thing, and we've talked about it a bunch this year. It's like, man, a minute away. I mean, we were a minute away on 2 different booners this year that I could have shot or had a shot, and we were just a minute late, man, to get in position. Is unbelievable.
Crazy.
So you'll see on the video.
Right.
Next year's video.
Now, Jared tells me that you might have been the guy that was with him, that part of the adventure was not really worrying about the clothing or necessarily the smell. Certainly you guys are, I mean, you're on the road, you're sleeping in tents, you're not necessarily hitting the local shower. You're going to smell like a human by the end of the week for sure. And that's, seems like it doesn't matter. And you go into Walmart and getting pants and spray painting them a color that you like.
Absolutely. Well, when you're hunting the way we're hunting with the grass and stuff, I mean, I'll tell you, I go to Walmart and they got everything. They don't really make a camo out there that's really, really suits what I'm wanting to do and what Jared's wanting to do, and Shay and everybody. And I'll tell you right now that the best camo that I've seen that you can buy, and they don't even make it no more, is that mossy oak brush. It's like a camo they had for like coyote calling and antelope hunting and stuff like that for a little while. That stuff was amazing, but they don't sell it anymore. It's like the best camo they came out with, they don't sell it anymore. It's like, what? Everything else is too dark. I mean, it silhouettes you too much. It don't break you up. So I bought the tan colored pants and khaki colored stuff, and I spray paint them. Obviously, you're spray painting like, oh my gosh,
right.
I mean, how many deer have been scared of spray paint?
Smelling like a spray paint factory by the time you're done.
So that's how you got to look at it too. Obviously, they smell it. They're not gonna like the situation. But
right.
Like I said, the way we're doing it, we're using that painting our clothes and getting that color we want, because we're actually playing the wind. We're going downwind of these animals. I'm going to say 5% of the time an animal will get downwind of you. There was actually a hunt that I had this year that I ended up missing. The deer shot over his back. You'll see on the next video. We had kind of a crosswind, and the wind was switching. Within an hour, the wind went from out of the southwest to the northwest within an hour on our stock. And we didn't check the wind. We didn't go by every minute. We thought we were going to get in there and the wind was going to at least stay out of the south or west and not get no north in it within an hour of the stock. And we got within 30 yards of him, and that went. All of a sudden I felt a little bit of breeze hit me on the back of the neck, and the doe popped up, and I seen his head jerk, his rack do a real quick jerk movement. So I knew, get ready. I drew back, and my bow was shooting 10 inches high, and shot right over the dang back of this giant 150-inch 8-point, but whatever. Regroup from it.
Right.
That's where sometimes, being sent free out there doing that, like that was like one out of the very many times that where we needed to be smelling like nothing,
Right. Yep. So, yes, that was my next question about swirling winds. I mean, it seems like directions can change quickly. Maybe not as much where you are because you're on a little more open plain, but where I live, it's wooded, and it seems like winds bounce off of mountain things and turn around and head a different direction constantly.
But if you get around a ditch or a swell or a river bottom, I mean, you're going to get some swirling winds, and that's when you got to be on top of your scent control game. And that means, I'll tell you, I used to be so weirdo about it. Like I had my bags, my boots I'd wear, my boots would be separate. I would, and I'll tell you, man, I would even bring an extra pair of socks and put new socks on and put the socks that I had walking in a Ziploc bag.
Right.
I mean, you just think if you just delete all the stuff, what if, I dressed as soon as I got out of the truck, I dressed into all my gear.
Yep.
Go into the jungle, I just made me feel confident. And I had a lot of deer that would, come downwind of me, and using my Big Buck Ruiner cover scent. It helped me. It just worked out. I can't tell you how many big deer I had downwind of me. And sometimes deer are downwindy and they're not, your scent's rising above them, or it's just barely missing them. And that's what you want to pray for, especially when they're in range.
Gotcha. I want to talk about a memorable deer hunt with you. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you about your Big Buck Ruiner. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Actually, I started making this back in the day. I mean, obviously, what's something that's a smell that, you really, cedar tree just gives off that aroma of a good cover scent,
Oh, yeah.
What deer has ever been scared of a cedar tree?
Yeah, I love cedar smell. Yeah.
So, I've developed a kind of a way to make it and into a substance that really holds its smell, and it takes a little bit of a process, but I've actually have been in the market with it for the last couple of years, and people are laying big deer down, and I've had maybe one kid that smelled it, and he's like, this don't smell like what I wanted, and that was the only kid, and we probably sold close to over 1,000 bottles just from Facebook in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And
I've never had one negative besides that one little comment. Everybody has loved it. It's gave them a confidence, and a lot of people are killing big deer with it, giving you that extra 2 or 3 seconds to kill that deer if he's downwind. It covers you up, man, and it really works well.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll check that out. Very good.
Mm-hmm. And I have a partner of mine that I joined in on the deal with me. His name's Scott Boswell. He's a heck of a deer hunter.
Okay.
He's my partner in crime on that deal.
But Chancey, let's get into a memorable deer hunt. We prepped you a little while ago, and I said, think of a good deer story for us that might be on the top of your head right now.
I'll tell you, man, this I've got a ton of them. I just want to talk about a really cool one.
Okay.
This hunt was actually out in Kansas, and I'm not talking about the big giant deer shot. That was a pretty awesome deal. It was unbelievable to be a part of that deal.
Yeah.
But this is a deer that I shot, and it was actually a section of public ground that And this is actually a ground stalking story. It worked out really well, but I read this buck. We drove around the section, and I knew there was a big deer in the area, and drove around the section, and I seen this, and this is late rut, I seen this mama doe and 2 babies there, and obviously I kept driving with the vehicle because I didn't want them to, as soon as you stop the vehicle, usually they take off running.
Yeah. And
so obviously I'm scanning to try to see if there's a buck around there near him, and I didn't see nothing, so I stopped the vehicle. We thought we'd get a little video off the road. And I look below this, I'm scanning, looking at the does through my binoculars, and all of a sudden I see this cage down below him in the grass. Well, what this deer did, he heard the vehicle and plopped right down. That's what them big mature deer do. You might be just seeing a couple does out there, don't you be fooled. There's probably a big one laying there, a lot of times, but he's laying there and just hiding from the vehicle. And so, yeah, and especially this time of the year, I mean, they're wore out from chasing the ladies around all fall. So anyways, obviously I got back on the gas and took off, and I'm like, dang, that was a big deer, and he's on public ground. So I kept going. Well, the doe and the 2 babies took off running, and I was pretty bummed out. And I'm watching out of the corner of my eye out the back of the vehicle while I'm driving. All of a sudden he stands up and starts kind of trotting after him a little bit, but he's keeping them about 100 yards ahead of him. So I'm like, dang, hopefully he'll go out of sight and plop right back down. Well, I drove down to the intersection, and I watched the mama doe and the 2 babies cross the ridge, and I gave him about 5 minutes, and he never followed. So I knew he ducked back down into the brush, and that's just from seeing big bucks do that a lot.
Yep.
In visual, I knew that's what he did. He got out of sight, and he got laid in a place where he wanted to be, and and especially late rut, they're starting to slow down, especially them big mature deer. They're wore out, man. They can't do the wild run like the young 3 and 4-year-olds. So anyway, he laid in a spot where I thought he was at. So what I did is I drove around the section, made sure he wasn't around, and I stay in the open or slip out the back or whatever, just to give me some confidence that he's still there. And got a game plan with my cameraman. The wind was out of the south, straight out of the south, and I looked and made sure the wind wasn't going to switch on me. And it said strong south wind, and slid in there from the west of where I thought this deer was, and just sun shining in my face. But I just kept scanning, and I finally found him. Probably, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes later, I found where he was laying. I'd seen the top of his tines in the grass, and there was a big clump of weeds right by his head. So I put his head so that weeds were blocking him, and I slid just far enough south of him that I wasn't going to get no crosswind or a wind swirl. And I was able to me and my cameraman were able to walk within 60 yards of him and then put the initial final sneakaroo slither on him. And I just kept that wind. I went deep enough to the south of him just to where that wind was never going to cone into him. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay.
And I got in there, and I got into 10 yards from him, and I could see his tines, and I had my cameraman, Jonathan Adams, he held back with the camera and 40 yards away, and he's filming from there because it was just so open. I mean, I was lucky to get to where I was at, and plus 25-mile-an-hour winds helped out too.
Right.
That wind, everything was just the perfect flavor of success to kill that deer. And we slither in there, and I get to 10 yards, and I'm like, man, this feels pretty good right here. But I was like, you know what? I got greedy, and I wanted to get in within that 7 yards, a couple more yards. So I got in there, and every now and then he would hear me a little bit, like, I'd break a little bit of a twig or a little bit of the weeds, and he would snap his head over and look, but I just kept still, and finally he'd eventually calm down, and it was crazy. And he would look straight to the north, and every once in a while he would look to the northeast, but he'd only hold that position for maybe, let's say, 15, 20 seconds. So I knew that was going to be that was when I was going to come up and draw on him and then come up and shoot him bedded. And I found a little hole through the weed, probably the size of a muskmelon, and I could visualize my shot going through there and hitting what I want. I was actually going to hit the spine and then go through and hit the lungs and hopefully the heart too, to shish kebab him. And he turned his head, and I told my cameraman, I said, "You ready?" I drew my bow and came up and slithered the arrow right through that little hole, and the deer didn't even move.
Wow. No kidding.
It's crazy.
And was this shooting with a compound bow or traditional
This
bow?
was with a compound. I'm not, you know what? I'm not confident to do the long bow yet. Someday Jared will get me convinced, but I'm not the best shot with a compound. Like, I need to practice a lot more. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I can hold my composure. Like, Like, I don't feel like I get buck fever once I go into kill mode. Like, I hold it together. It's just my shooting's just not, it's not the best, you know. I mean, I need to be shooting at 20 yards and need to be hitting a golf ball. I mean, I'm shooting maybe a grapefruit, you know.
Yep.
So that's the type of stuff I just need to shoot more. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just so busy. It's hard for me to fit in time, but when you're deer hunting and doing all this stuff, you gotta make time, you know, so you ain't wounding animals and all that.
Well, it reminds.
I've definitely been unfortunate and wounded quite a few big ones, you know, and it sucks to say, but that's part of bow hunting, and you just got to get back into the grind and get after them.
Right. It reminds me of the whole concept of that perhaps the Wenzels and kind of coined, and Cuz Strickland reminded me of it a couple weeks ago, is that bow hunting is not about how far, it's about how close. Because that's, you know, you remove all those variables, because obviously an arrow is lightweight. It's not going to fight through anything. You have to have a clear shot, and the further away you are, just it's more variables that you have to deal with that are even more sensitive to anything a bullet can do.
Yes.
So,
and we're using 2 blades too, so that helps, you know, shooting through weeds and stuff like that. You're not going to get that deflection, which, you know, there is a lot of good expandables out there. I'm not a big fan of it, but you know, everybody's got their own flavor and their own confidence. That's the key.
Right.
All I know is it's hard to get an expandable to go through a shoulder blade, and obviously you don't plan to go through a shoulder blade, but let me tell you, deer cut cookies when you're calling them, or they're on pins and needles, or they spot you and you're trying to get that arrow go, they turn into it.
Right.
Things happen. So I believe in an arrow that's going to do good when you do hit them perfect, and do good when you don't hit them perfect.
Yeah.
And 2 blades hard to beat, man. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of good ones out there. The Dirt Nap's what I use, and there's a lot of other ones out there. It's just whatever flavor and whatever you know, the amount of money that you're able to spend. And there's so many good broadheads out there that really work good and delete all the failure stuff.
Right.
You know, I mean, you got to have a laid back angle on a broadhead. I believe in that 100%. You have to have something that is lean back. Anything that you have that has not a real angle on it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You're deleting, you're taking away from penetration. So
that's
all there is to it.
So a pretty heavy angle.
I believe in that 100%. And the blade has to be, if you're going through bone, that blade has to be supported.
Right.
It can't be just a little skinny blade sticking out there. I mean, they work, but when you're going through shoulder blades and hitting bone, that stuff don't work out.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense. I mean,
I've lost 2 or 3 big deer shooting.
Right.
It's bad hitting them in the shoulder blade. You know, whatever. I shouldn't have shot him in the shoulder blade, but I didn't mean to.
Right. And the bigger the deer, the bigger the shoulder blade too. So.
I mean, I mean, more mature of a deer, the thicker the bone gets.
That's it.
One of the biggest deer I ever shot was my first year, and I was shooting a black bear, Fred Bear black bear.
Yep.
Plastic cam Walmart bow.
Yep.
Shooting, I think it was 1360 or 27.515 Easton aluminum arrows.
Yep.
With 4-blade muzzies. I had this big 175-inch cage come in there, and he was 10 yards, and I hit him square in the shoulder blade, and I went in probably about an inch or 2.
Yeah.
And the deer took off running, chasing the doe with my arrow sticking out of the side of him.
Right.
You know, the arrow fell out, and the deer was fine. He just kept chasing his girlfriend like nothing even happened.
Well, that little that shoulder blade on a big whitetail is like armor. You know, it's a suit of armor. You got to have the right penetration method.
And I'll tell you, there's a lot of times guys say they went through the shoulder blade. Well, they went through the thin part of it. Well, I blew right through the shoulder blade. Well, you shot through the little skinny plate part. That's what happened. That's how you're able to get through there, you know. So gotcha. I don't know. Everybody's got their own lingo on the broadheads and speed and all that stuff, you know. But it's just, I think the simpler it is, the better it is. And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot from Jared's lingo, like on, you know, people forget about the basics, man. And I forgot about the basics. Like, Chance, you're forgetting about the basics, you know. And I mean, I had couple different kinds of arrows in my quiver. It's like, you know, and that made me kind of feel stupid. I was like, what am I doing? I know better than this. So basics are the key of bow hunting. And Jared kind of reminded me of that this year. Just keep it simple, clean. And that's the best to have your best success is that.
Right. Gotcha.
I believe.
Very good. All right, I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you, Chancey. And
bring it.
I have not prepped you for them. So, all right, I'm going to bring it right now. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
You know what? Being positive. Every time you're out in the woods, you gotta act like it's that time, and just being positive. I mean, keeping yourself positive and confidence is the main thing.
Right. That's a good one.
All the other stuff is all little players inside the box to make it happen.
Right.
But being confident and being positive on your hunt.
Right. That's a really good point, because it's a mental game, and a lot of guys.
It is 100% mental chasing big whitetail.
Yep. A lot of hunters will get in their head and forget about playing the wind. You can't even play the wind if you don't go out to play the wind. And then if you're discouraged so much that you stay in instead of go out, you can't even get to the basics.
Yeah, you got to get into the jungle to kill a big one.
That's right.
You ain't going to kill one sitting at the couch, at the campfire, reading the Field and Stream magazine.
That's a very good point. All right, what's that? we all have these things that we like to bring into the woods with. It sounds like you guys are kind of minimalist with what you bring out there. But do you have like a good luck charm or anything that kind of bugs you if you forget it back at camp or in the truck?
Man, I really don't. I really don't have anything that I carry with me. You know what? I guess it's never really come across my mind. I might have to have me a little good luck thing with me from now on,
right,
just so I can just have it. Maybe
right.
That's my problem.
Maybe that's it. Maybe you just need a little.
Maybe that's just the frosting on the cake, but
right.
Maybe I just need to get something like
right.
that.
Maybe that's the other piece of that little piece of confidence that you haven't had yet. Right.
Why not a buckeye? You know what I mean? A buckeye's good luck, and plus it's buck.
I have one. Yeah, I had my good friend from Ohio.
Really?
Yeah, you got me one a while
that's
back.
Awesome.
It's
cool.
It's been one of those things I turn to. Yep. All right. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Biggest pet peeve. You know what? I can't stand negative people.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand. I have to be around positive people. I know that's it kind of goes with the first thing you said. Asked me, but I'm telling you, man, it's all about. I can't be around negative people. I got to be around people that are positive and enjoying life, man.
Yep.
I mean, that's what keeps me going. I put myself around people that are motivated and that want success and love what they're doing, man. That's the type of people I like to be around. That's my biggest pet peeve. To keep your life going, you got to be around positive people.
Right.
And if you're not, you have to help them be more positive to where you're able to be around them or something of that nature. But does
Gotcha.
that
make total sense? I'm a big fan of that as well. All right. How old are you today, Chancey?
I'm 33.
You're 33. What would you tell the 16-year-old Chancey Walters knowing what you know today?
16. I'll tell you right now. I mean, there's a lot of kids that want to do the video thing and everything like that. I feel it's a flooded market now.
Mm-hmm.
I would just go out and have fun, film what you got. Don't just have fun. I mean, the filming stuff it's great, but everybody knows it's a flooded market now, and it ain't like it was 10 years ago.
Right.
It's tough to get your foot in the door and do different things. I mean, we're just having a dang good time. Jared's doing is unbelievable. I'm very fortunate to be a part of it with him, and he brought me on to do a bunch of hunting with him and stuff like that. And it's all sponsor free. Nobody's paying us. It's all I got other ways to make. Obviously, my Big Buck Ruiner, I'm going to start selling that, but and different fishing products that I got. But I'm just, for kids growing up, have a good time and learn from the guys that's been successful in hunting. I mean, that's the main thing, man. And just good hunting ethic. And there's a few things that I've done back in the day that I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? And everybody makes mistakes, but you just got to do the right thing and look up to the guys that are successful in hunting and learn from them guys, because obviously if they're killing that many deer, they must be doing something right, and that's good guys to look up to. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. It definitely does.
In my mind.
Yep. All right, you're at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and a stranger comes up to you and asks you the question, "What do you do for a living?" What do you say?
I tell them I'm a full-time wildlife artist, entrepreneur. I have a couple different products that are startups that are in the process. I've done a lot of different things, man. I've guided fishing, I've guided hunting. My artwork has always been my security. That's always funded. It's always gave me. That's what's gave me put gas in my truck, pay my bills. That's gave me my leverage. It gave me my artwork has gave it to where I haven't had to have a normal job. It's gave me time to work on these crazy ideas and inventions that I got. And hopefully one of them will strike here pretty soon for me. I mean, I've been working hard on them. I'm getting very close to hopefully making some money while I sleep and having a good product that I can make some money on and work on the paintings. Because eventually I want to be able to paint paintings and not have to like worry about making money on them. I want to build these masterpieces and not have to worry about a deadline. Like this painting's for somebody. I'm building these paintings for me. And then when I'm done with them, then people can buy the prints and stuff like that. That's what I want to get to.
Nice.
That's kind of my goal.
Very cool. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I'm starving right now. When I'm on the go, I'll usually get me a bowl of honey bunches of oats. No kidding. Or I'll stop at Casey's and get me a bacon, egg, and cheese croissant.
All right. Very good.
I will promise you I am going to be rolling up in there after I get off this call.
I bet.
Grabbing me a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit.
Yes, sir. All right. You get on the side of a highway.
And an eggnog. This time of year, I have an eggnog with, every time I go to Casey's, I get me an eggnog.
An eggnog? Interesting.
Oh, man. Straight up Chubby Chase style Christmas vacation.
Yeah, man. With the moose mugs. Sure.
I don't have the moose mug. My sister's got them, but I'm going to order me some just because that's when this time of year.
It's the only way to
drinking eggnog when I'm hunting and rumming eggnog at night.
There you go. It's the only way to fly.
Yeah.
All right. You can have your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's blank. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything on it that you want. What would you put on it?
I'd probably put my artwork on it.
I think that'd be a smart move. That's a smart move with a website on where you can
display my artwork.
Buy it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have something that's going to connect to something.
Right. Exactly.
For sure.
If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Successful. You know what? I'll tell you, I'm not just going to say this just because I'm telling you, Jared Scheffler is a good guy to look up to. And I'm not just saying this, but I will tell you, because I'm going to say most things. I have a lot of successful people in my life that I look up to. One of them's a really good friend of mine out of Texas. He's an entrepreneur. He's a great guy. I have a buddy out of Alaska. His name's Ross Baxter. The guy's taught me so much. It's unbelievable. More than I've ever learned in any school. And I've been very fortunate to have 2 or 3 of these guys that I've learned a lot from. And I need to, the things that they've told me, I need to take them up on that information a lot more than I do. But I've been very fortunate to have people that come to me and want me to be successful. It's great. It's awesome. Like I've had a lot of people that want me to be successful, and they help me and they tell me what to do and give me motivation.
Yeah.
Jared and the hunting, that kid, if there's one person to look up to, that's the kid. I mean, within the 10 years of what he's developed is so unique. Public hunting on the ground, his own video style. He edits all this video. He's got a couple guys that help him, but he is like the brain behind it, and he has worked his ass off to get to where he's at. 10 years of grinding, and finally the last 2 or 3 years, it's all starting to pay off for him and with everything. And I'll tell you, I tell this every time to people, that big deer that he shot, it's like, what more of a better dude that to happen to, promoting public ground and doing what he's doing, and him shoot that mega giant typical with a longbow on the ground. A lot of people are like, man, what if you shot that deer that day? I was like, it wouldn't have been as cool. Like, Jared was meant to shoot that deer. It was so unbelievable how that worked out. You want to talk about things happening for a reason.
Right.
That was pretty unbelievable.
Gotcha.
How it worked out.
Very cool.
Think about it. That giant of a typical on the ground, on public ground, he's promoting public ground, all the stuff that he's doing, and he shoots that big giant. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Jared definitely, our shows with Jared have become some of our most popular and most downloaded shows. And I think it's reaching a very commonplace group of individuals, the guys that can hunt the public land and don't have access to everything else. There's a lot of those guys out there. And he kind of proves that it can be done.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I killed 2 mega giants this year on public ground. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, I hear a lot of people all the time, man, I don't have a place to hunt. I don't want to hear that, because that's negativity to me. And you have public ground somewhere near you, and I'll promise you there's a good deer floating around there somewhere. And if you ain't seen him, you ain't looked hard enough. And the more time you're out there, you're going to get And, some public ground, you ain't going to, if you have that mindset that you're going to kill 170 out there, maybe that's dream world. Maybe you need to lower your standards and shoot a deer that's going to make you happy and not dream about, obviously everybody wants to shoot a mega giant, but you have to get to reality sometimes, and there's public ground. There's so many thousands of acres of public ground, and there's always a place to hunt. I know you've heard it. I don't have nowhere to hunt.
Oh yeah.
Like, what? Are you kidding me? You got public. I guarantee I can find a place for you to hunt.
Yeah.
Like there's public ground everywhere. We're very fortunate to have public ground, and we need more of it. And I hope the government and DNR or whatever, however it works, keeps buying more ground and makes it more ground public for people. I mean, we're fortunate to have that.
Gotcha. What's a day in your life look like?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, I live a pretty wild, sporadic lifestyle. I'm slowly starting to get more organized, but my day, every day is different, which I like it. I love my life, but there's sometimes like, man, I wish I could just do something normal. I mean, I got 40 feathers to paint by Christmas. I have to fit those in.
Right.
I'm out here pheasant hunting right now, talking to you guys, and I got a lot of things. I got a buddy flying in from the airport. I got to go pick him up sometime today when he calls me.
Yep.
I just go with the flow, man. And you know what? I'm a last minute type of guy, but it always works out, man.
Right.
I always make it happen. It works out.
Gotcha.
It's crazy.
Gotcha. All right. And then finally, what's a typical hunting day in your life look like?
Well, now, I mean, I'm hunting a whole different style with Jared now, and it's the most. It actually is. I say it's not stressful, but it's almost the stressful that you like. It's almost like it's something that you have to have. I mean, I'll tell you, I've never done drugs in my life, and I'll tell you right now, bow hunting on the ground is like the biggest thing for me. And it's just like, I have to do it. Like, and there's no like, I can't kill one on public. I'm just going to go hunt private now to kill my tag. It's like, I have to kill one on public on the ground that way now. He's changed the whole game on my outlook of hunting. Duck, I love the waterfowl hunt too, but deer hunting, that's my style of deer hunting from here on out. Obviously someday I might buy some ground and have a place out back. I might slide out back and have a landowner tag and kill me a big buck out of my tree stand. But I'm ground pounding them from here on out, man. I mean, straight Cherokee style. That's what I'm into. Gotcha.
Very cool. One of my goals before I go is to, on a snow-fallen day, track a big buck and get a shot on goal with my bow and arrow instead of a gun. That's one of my things.
So awesome, man. Jared was telling me about some guys. I forget their name. They're up in the Northeast, and they're known for that.
Yes.
What was their names? Do you remember their names?
They're the Benoits, the Hell Blood.
Yep, that's them. Mm-hmm. Them guys are the real deal, on that. I mean, they probably got books and all that stuff. Jared was telling me about them. I was like, man, that definitely, I'd love to go do that someday. Late muzzleloader or something, or know one come out and follow him into his bedroom and kill him.
That's it. And
cool.
I did quite a bit of work with Lane before he passed, and he shared with me quite a few of the techniques, and I wanted to bring that to one other level, and that is to use the bow and arrow to do exactly what they do with their guns. That would be intense.
That'd be so cool. I hope that all works out for him. I guarantee it'll work out. It might not work the first time, but it'll happen.
I'm not a negative person. However, one thing is clear, that you need snow in order to do that exact thing, and we don't have snow yet. And it's been it seems like it falls later and later.
You might have to just migrate to somewhere where they have snow, and
I might have to get
into the jungle. Hopefully, he's on the ground that he can hunt and able to finish the track out.
Yep, I may have to get into the Canadian jungle to make that happen. But
yes, that's where you need to go. That's where, when I think of tracking, I just think of Canada.
Right.
Like that'd be like a place where you could do that.
Right. Yep. So anyway, that's on my goal list of things to do before I check out. So, Chancey,
awesome,
this has been great. Where can we find more information about you online, social media, about your Big Buck Ruiner and anything else you've got going on out there?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, most people can follow me on Facebook. Obviously, it's crazy. Facebook don't let you have more than 5,000 friends, but you can still follow. Mm-hmm. I have an art page on Facebook, Chancey Walters, and how you spell it, CHANCY, mm-hmm. Walters, WALTERS. And you can look me up on Facebook and Instagram. I mean, Instagram's awesome because you can have unlimited number of people. and follow their stuff, which is really cool. My Big Buck Ruiner product, www.bigbuckruiner.com. And I also have some fishing products coming out that's pretty awesome. One of them's called Crank Wraps. And it's actually a lure application that makes all your fishing lures look real. And it's pretty awesome. It'll all hopefully be on the market this spring and for everybody to purchase. And that's crankwraps.com. And my artwork, I post pictures of my artwork all the time on Facebook, and that's how I present my artwork nowadays is through that and social media. No website for that. I probably need to get a website. It's no excuse. I need to have one anyway, to have, but that'll happen in the near future.
Gotcha. Very cool. Chancey, this has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Hey, I'm glad that you called me and wanted me to come on. That's awesome, man.
It's always entertaining to talk to a Whitetail Adrenaline crew member. It is something very, very passionate that comes through in each of one of you guys.
Yeah. Jared's definitely convinced me to do this stuff with him, and I'm glad he did, because I'm really enjoying it and having a good time with him. He's a great friend of mine, and it's definitely the biggest rush of hunting that I've had.
Well, thanks to Chancey Walters for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We certainly enjoyed our time with him and learning about his life and how he works with a Whitetail Adrenaline crew, but actually makes a living as a wildlife artist. And that gives him the schedule that he needs so he can go make things and invent things and become an entrepreneur and sell new products and a stress-free lifestyle, as he describes. So pretty cool. Really like talking to Chancey and learned quite a few things from him, and we'll connect with those guys down the road. Well, Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about deer movement this time of year. And
the Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
And based on off what I'm seeing there in Ohio, the evening feed's back on. Deer are starting to hit a food source right before dark. If you got that special spot that's got a food source available for the deer to come to, I suggest you get your tree stand moved over and focus on that food this time of year.
Oh, dude, that's a great tip. In fact, I've noticed that there's a feeding pattern kind of starting to step back in as the pressure lays off the woods. Interesting you brought that up. But yeah, that's a great idea. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blubrry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.